Welcome to the Pathmark Presents podcast. Pathmark is the AI for website conversions. With increasing online competition, over 98% of website visitors don't convert. The ability to successfully show your value proposition and support visitors in their buying journey separates you from the competition online. Pathmark qualifies, converts leads on your website by figuring out where they are in the buying journey and influencing them in key decision moments with relevant micro experiences like case studies, intro videos, and much more. Stay relevant to your visitors and increase conversions by 50% by adding Pathmark to your website in seconds, letting the artificial intelligence do all the work, and increase your conversions by 50% while doing marketing as usual. Check us out on pathmark.com. Okay, everybody, welcome to today's podcast for Pathmark Presents. I'm really excited. Today we've got Bob McGinley from the Tech Leads on the line. How are you today, Bob?
I'm great, Kevin. Thanks for having me.
No problem. Glad to have you on. So, being that this is a podcast all about growth and marketing and digital strategies, and you being a fractional CMO, I wanted to make sure that we take the time to talk about what we're doing from your perspective for multiple clients, but also for your own business as it is. So maybe we could get started with a very basic open-ended question. Who are your clients? Do you focus on any specific areas? What sort of industries do you particularly work in? Why don't you just give us the lay of the land?
Sure. So we got the idea to do this, probably about a little bit more than a year ago. I was working at Software One, leading technical sales for North America. And we were doing a lot of outreach to clients and, getting these clients into the mix that we didn't really know the size of their business or, where they were in the progress and that journey. And we started to notice some patterns showing up with them, and that they were doing really well. So they were generating revenue. They had some level of growth, but they had kind of hit a roadblock. And the roadblocks were sometimes technical, sometimes getting the right resources, and someone had left the business and they were stuck trying to get some of their stuff up and running. So we kind of saw all these different challenges that they were having around not only technology, but the growth of the business. And we would go in and offer them all of these consulting services. And invariably, we would have to give them the sticker price at some point. And you could just see like the blood leave their head, right? And we could tell like these guys aren't really in the position to go and pay for, a high value consulting company like Software One, where I was working previously. But they did have some money to invest in some of those services, but, it was at a much smaller price point. So I got the idea to say, how can I help these size companies really kind of, hone in on what the challenges were in the business, get them kind of clear of some of those hurdles, and get them back to a point where, they can really start growing at a different level and be able to scale the business. So that's where the idea came from. So the initial focus, I would say, was really on that small, medium business, a lot of ISVs, so technology companies, much like yourselves. And then it kind of branched out from there a little bit to companies who had either lost an executive, they're in the hunt for someone new, but they've got a gap to fill. So they know it's going to take them 6, or so months, but they've got projects in the middle of delivery, and they need someone who can, come in, understand the landscape very quickly, and get back to being productive and help them for a short period of time without being a full-time employee with all the benefits and all the other stuff going on. So that's another area where we're getting some interest. And then the third one is kind of a unique one just from some of the contacts I have. And it's really with venture capital companies who are going into some of these smaller, potential high growth companies and noticing that they're lacking a certain level of experience or leadership in growing and marketing the business. So now we're working with some of those types of companies to partner with them to say, hey, when you've got, a potential hit for, a high growth company, but, they're missing some key roles. They don't really have the capital yet to go and hire a lot of expensive CTOs, CIO, all the security type folks they're going to need. We can come in and kind of fill that gap, get them going to the level they need to, and then be able to warrant that investment going forward.
Interesting. So basically SMBs who have a bit of a gap to fill, but also when there's VCs who kind of have an opportunity, but they realize one of the things that they're investing in doesn't necessarily have an executive in the right place, they say Bob's the right guy to put in there.
Yes, exactly.
That's interesting. That's very interesting. And to kind of shift on the same topic, when we talk about acquiring clients specifically for your business, like how do you go about acquiring clients, whether it be one of these small to medium-sized businesses or one of the venture capital firms? How do you typically find them, get in touch with them, or how do you typically go about client acquisition?
Yeah, this is where I think age and experience has some benefit in the game. I've done, and then the other big factor is that I've always been really careful. I've had some very important people in my career that were mentors and whatnot, and I've always been really careful not to burn bridges. So most of my business at this point has come from referrals and word of mouth. So the challenge in this type of role is that you have to have some sort of credibility. You have to have people that will kind of stand behind you to say, this guy's done the right level of work. He's been at the C-suite before. He's worked at the monster, global corporations at the right level. So he really does have the experience and the temperament to be able to come in and kind of figure out the lay of the land very quickly and see what your challenges are. So for me, it really hasn't been much on the advertising. We've looked at Google ads, we've looked at LinkedIn ads. We're probably going to do some of that in the future. But so far, the growth that we've had, which has actually been really good in the last couple of months, has all come from word of mouth and referrals.
Awesome. And so that kind of makes me want to transition a little bit into talking a little bit about your website and some metrics and things like that. So in terms of the website, if it's not necessarily acting as a client acquisition tool or necessarily like, let's say, a lead gen tool, are you typically using your website as more of like a client education tool or like a place to qualify yourself if anyone wanted to check you out? Like, what are you using the website for nowadays?
Yeah, I would say that. And the website is, I would say, a work in progress. We're still a small new company. I did all the website work myself. So, one of the benefits of being technical in nature is that I have the ability to kind of save some money and do some of that myself. But I still have challenges in that regard, especially around the SEO stuff and some of those things. So, it's really just trying to, I think, figure out what are the priorities for the business. The website, I would say, has been important, but it's something that, we're going to have to focus on as we grow forward. And, that's something that we'll potentially be working with PathMonk on in the future.
Interesting. We would love to have you. We'd love a partnership. Okay, so speaking of websites, I want to talk a little bit about metrics, but more so in terms of what you've utilized in the past, what sort of metrics you think are important to all marketers out there. So when we talk about metrics and we talk about leading successful marketing campaigns, what are some of the metrics that you are typically focusing on and that you think most marketers should be keeping an eye on?
Yeah, I think, obviously I'm a sales guy at heart, right? So, if you don't have pipe, you're dead. So, you have to be able to generate some sort of pipeline and develop leads from that channel. So, and we're doing that already. We've gotten some leads and opportunities from the website already. I'm a big proponent of content development. Which I think is a strange new world these days, especially with all the AI stuff going on. So it's really hard to get content out there that actually gets attention. I think people are becoming insensitive to it in a certain way. So I'm very diligent about trying to write with some level of wit and humor and really try to get the point across in a different way. So, that's one thing that I would say that we're very, careful about, in that I don't want to just generate, chat GPT responses and post them on the website. So, and I find myself not wanting to go and look at other people's content because I can tell very quickly it's like, this is robotic, right? You
Yeah,
didn't write
people are
this.
so able to kind of smell what's fake and what's real, like right away, even from the first paragraph or the first couple sentences, right? It's so hard to create original content that people will actually engage with. I think we're finding something similar.
Yeah, and that's, so that's the focus, right? Is I think you just have to kind of be unique, and you've got to bring that level of, fun and engagement into it, which I can tell right away with the LLM generated stuff. It tends to be missing, right? So, I'm a big proponent of telling stories of, relating things back to, places where I grew up and other things that that I experience in life that other people may find humorous and those types of things. So, for instance, I was just in Europe for a couple weeks, and every time I go to Europe, I notice how horribly they have designed bathrooms, right? So I've been writing a couple excerpts on design, and here's the birthplace of civilization and how they still haven't figured out how to design a good bathroom. And tying that back into some of the things that we do, helping customers get really focused on design and what's really important. And you don't put the shower head in the middle of the wall of the tub, right? I mean, there's a reason it goes at the end where the faucet is. So, it's that kind of interjection of, the storytelling that I really try to put into the content we're developing.
That's really well put. I don't think I've ever heard anyone use an analogy quite like that on the podcast yet. But I would totally agree. And I also think when it comes to content, authenticity, right? Because eventually, if you're trying to grab someone's attention and they do end up engaging with you at some point, you don't want there to be some sort of mixed signal between what they saw in a piece of content or what they read versus what they're experiencing when they're actually engaging with you, right? So for me, I think authenticity and bringing some of those true stories that you've experienced yourself, the traveling to Europe and some of the things around where you grew up, these things can really stick with people. And then when they actually meet you, I feel like it makes such a better connection, right? Because they can see, oh, that was real. That was someone who was really talking about his own past, not just making something up.
You said the key word, right? It's making a connection. And I think that's like the biggest challenge of the business world right now, especially for someone like me who's, just starting out. You have to be able to make that connection. And if you're just seen as generating websites and generating content, and you're not actually bringing some of your personality into the mix, I think you're going to struggle trying to get those types of connections.
Well put, well put. So moving within the same idea of what you typically do in terms of a marketer, in terms of a sales guy, what are some of the tools or methods that you're typically utilizing on a regular basis when it comes to growing any sort of marketing campaign or even growing a website success? What are some of the tools and methods that you are typically utilizing?
So it's a great question. So we're working with a small website who does, it's kind of like a score, right? So you can go and score your business, kind of take a couple, questions, and then we can give you a report, basically like a health score for where you are from, the entrepreneurial path and the startup game, right? And it's a couple things. It's a great way to generate a lead because it's, we can get customers some information. So it's actually some benefit to them because there's a couple critical questions that we typically go through a client engagement with, so that, they'll kind of see where they are. We then get to see where they might be having challenges. And then I've got their email, right? So now I can see, hey, some of the things that I saw in your responses are, typical patterns that, we can help you with, right? Maybe a change management part of the game. It may be something else that you're struggling with, whether it's resources or getting the technology moving in the direction that you need it to. Maybe, the product's not priced at the point you need it, right? So there's certain things that we kind of go through very quickly in that little survey, just 8 to 10 questions. And then we get that contact back from the customer. They get some value out of it to see, because we give them some some level of response and some recommendations about how they could address some of the things that they're having challenges with. So that's one thing that we're doing, which we're just getting started. I think has a ton of potential, and I got that idea from another fractional leadership executive who's doing similar stuff, and he's had some really good traction with that as well. And then the other thing is I'm really big on LinkedIn. It's just because it's free for the most part, right? I used to have a premium account there. I don't anymore because I don't really need it. I'm not mailing a lot of people, but it's a great way to reach out and to get the story out. I have a ton of connections, so it's a good way to stay in touch with people and let them know what I'm seeing in the industry and things that they can be ready for, right? And then the other thing that I do with LinkedIn is I don't want to give away all my secrets, but I'm really big on taking sales calls, right? I sell to sellers. So, when someone's contacting me and they've got a product that they want to hawk, right? They want to get me to go buy or generate some interest. I use that as a way to go and talk about my business as well. So, I'm not necessarily selling back to them, but I'm expanding the network, right? So I'm always trying to get in their head, hey, if you come across a customer, that maybe they can't afford your product right now, but there's potential, right? They're interested, throw them over the fence to me. I'll help you from a referral fee. And then I'll get that business to where they can afford you. And then, we'll put you in the roadmap for something that comes down the road.
I like that. It's kind of a difference between social selling, but also referral selling. It's all about working the network, right? And being able to make sure that people can not only understand what you're selling and why you're selling and why you're partnering with certain people, but when we talk about LinkedIn, also making sure that you have an optimized profile or account so that people can go back, check out what has this guy been talking about? What has he been sharing? What has he been up to lately? And I think that's one of the things that I've heard with some of the guests on the show recently is making sure that your LinkedIn account is kind of fully optimized, because it's one thing to go to a business's website to qualify them. Oh, what do they sell? What are some case studies, some testimonials? But if we're talking about someone on a more personal level, maybe like a fractional CMO, check out their LinkedIn. It's kind of one of the first places that someone's going to go to say, is this guy up to what I think he's doing? And, what's some of the advice? And yeah, when we talk about earlier, getting to know someone personally, making that connection, I think from a business perspective, LinkedIn's got to be one of the best ones to go to, right?
Yeah, and then you can see people's writing style, right? You can see if they're competent in certain areas, and then I'm not a big fan of putting everything there, so you got to leave a little bit to be discovered, I think. But you can put some stuff out there that I think gathers attention, and then it really, for me, this is a services business, so it really is about confidence and credibility. And you've got to establish that, or you're really never going to get to that, that first meeting or even the second meeting. And LinkedIn really helps me with that, just because I've done some really good stuff around the education front. And then, like I said, I've just been in the game for a long time, so you can kind of see that history and experience, which helps me in the long run, because I've just done a lot of stuff. So, I'm the Swiss Army knife of tech companies, right?
I like that. You put that in the tagline or on a business card. The Swiss Army knife. Okay, so we've talked about metrics. We've talked about tools. I also want to talk about key tasks. So from a sales or marketing perspective, what are some of the key tasks that you're typically focusing on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, so I thought about this a little bit before the call, and I typically try to split my day into 3 sections. So the first part is I got current customers. I have to I have work items that are in the queue with them. So I'll spend a good third or half of my day getting through that, making sure the business is running well, customer satisfaction is high. That's a key component to the success of my business, right? Because it comes back to that referral. The second part is lead generation, getting out there, developing content, writing, all of the things that I need to do to kind of keep the funnel, right, full, working on the website, right, meeting with people like you, like doing, this kind of outreach. It's all really beneficial. And then the last part that I'm really hyper focused on, just because I'm a bit of a super nerd, is I have to stay sharp on the education front, right? So there's multiple certifications that I'm after. I'm really deep in the security side of the house. So I want to be able to get into penetration testing and some of the other stuff that is of interest to me more because it's a personal interest, and it's just an area that I like to have conversations in when I go to Nerdland or a conference or something. And so I'm really a big believer in, maintaining that expertise level and staying sharp on the technology front.
So dealing with current clients, lead generation, continuous education.
Yes.
Excellent. I kind of do something similar for myself from a sales perspective. Something that I learned back when I was still living in Boston. One of the best sales leaders I ever had told me kind of this motto that he lived by, which is, what can I close today? What can I close tomorrow? What can I close next week? Right. And so when we're thinking about that pipeline, you're always thinking like, what's at the top? What's closest to actually closing? What's closest to actually going over that finish line, right? But you can't just be waiting only on that. You constantly need to be feeding the pipeline and also creating new opportunities for meetings that you might have the next week or the week after that and stuff like that. So yeah, I think it's always important to be managing that and filling the pipeline. What can I close today? What can I close tomorrow? What can I close the next week? I think it's very similar to yours. Current clients, right? Making sure that they're satisfied, lead generation, and also continuous education. Okay, so moving on, I want to ask some more rapid fire questions. So these are going to be short, crisp answers. We're not looking for in-depth detail. We're looking for the first thing that comes to your mind, okay?
Oh, God.
Okay. So to get things started, what's the last book that you read?
Last book I read is The Hemlock Cup. Story of Socrates in ancient Athens from the perspective of an Athenian living in the city at that point in time. Great book.
Gotta add it to my list. What is one thing that your company is focused on at the moment most?
Really just trying to establish the brand, establish, the customer sat level that we want with our customers. So number one, they stay with the business, and number two, they help us grow.
Excellent. If there would be no boundaries in technology, what would be one thing that you would want to have fixed for your role as a marketer today?
Ooh, no boundaries. Yeah, it's really developing, getting those connections, right? So, how do I get to know people a little bit more? What's their motivation? What makes them click, right? So how do you, instead of just their resume on LinkedIn, what is it about them that they're really looking to resolve and to fix?
It almost sounds like what you're saying is to immediately know someone's pain point before even talking to them.
Yeah, like their psychological profile, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So going into it, you already know like what buttons to push in terms of the conversation to get them to actually like engage with you.
Like what woke this guy up at 2:00 in the morning last night?
Yeah, that would be nice. That was just awesome technology. Okay, next one. If there was one repetitive task that you could automate, what would it be?
So I'm again in the services business, and I have spent a good part of my life writing contracts and statements of work. And I have always had this idea in the back of my head that if I could find a way to automate this and sell a product that does this for companies, does the whole kit and caboodle with pricing, the work plan, getting the documents out for signature, it's a gold mine. Anyone's interested, text me.
Sounds like you could bring that to one of your venture capital clients. Okay. And the last rapid fire question. What is one piece of advice that you would give yourself if you were to restart your journey as a marketer today?
Oh, well, buy NVIDIA.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Early. Yeah.
and then, I would give the same advice that I was given, right? That the connections you make along the journey are always going to be a benefit to you down the road if you manage them correctly. So, don't it's more than don't burn the bridge. It's like even though people, you come across people that you may not really enjoy being around,
Right.
but still try to nurture that relationship to the degree that you can, because you just never know when that person might have a fond memory of you and say, I really enjoyed working with that guy. He had some really good ideas. He brought a lot to the table. I could see working with him again. So, to me, it's that advice, right? Those connections are really important, even if you don't think they are at the time.
That's really, really well said. Okay, so we're moving on to what we call the last word. And before we dive into that, I just want to say, Bob, thank you so much for joining today. It was an awesome chat having you on here today. But the last word is always allowing the guest to be able to provide the last word. So if someone forgets everything about the interview that they just watched, what is the one thing that they should remember about you and your company?
You're going to find, I call it the brick wall on the road, and you're driving in the dark, right? You know it's out there. It's coming. You don't know when. There are people out there that can tell you where those walls are, right? And I'm one of those people. So, and that's what my team and I do, whether it's with marketing, whether it's with technology, whether it's with the product development, or partners and alliances. That roadblock is coming, and the sooner that you go and get the right people to kind of help you see what that vision is, the better off you're going to be in the long run.
Really well said. Really, really well said. So that being it, I wanted to say thank you so much, Bob, for joining the podcast today. Pathmark Presents really enjoyed having you. If there's anyone out there that needs some help in terms of a fractional sales, marketing, technology company, feel free to reach out to the tech leads. Bob, thank you so much for your time today, and I look forward to staying in touch.
Thanks, Kevin. Been great.